Toot toot, baby, it's time to ride the funk train once again as we count down the top 100 Atari games of all time. And today we're counting down.
We'll count down 40 to 31.
Let me tell you what's interesting about today's list. It happens to be getting close to Christmas time, and there's a lot of Christmas time apropos games that were kind of unintentional on the countdown today. Now, who has come up with this countdown? My name is Vinnie Vineyard, aka Funkmaster V. I run the largest Atari 7800 website on the planet for over 20 years. I also own several Atari 7800 world records, and I've partnered with Jon Stoll II. He goes by the Atari 7800 Pro Gamer because he's just not very creative. But he runs an awesome YouTube channel called the Atari Network. We have conspired with one another to come up with this list. And if you want to see the ground rules for what games make the list and which ones don't, go back to the original video, which would be 191. Now, without further ado, ho, ho, ho. And yes, I'm talking about your mom. Let's count down these damn games. There's some good ones on the list today.
Since the beginning of time, there's only been one website with the Babylons to claim every game reviewed when it came to the Pro System, and that's Atari7800forever.com.
But now it's time to get on that YouTube trip, babies. And who am I? I'm Funkmaster V, musician, ghost hunter, hat flipper, pro wrestler, comedian, actor, filmmaker, and I'm going to take you on a whirlwind tour of all things cool about Atari and the Atari 7800 with a podcast, news, even new crap. Baby, are you ready to get your groove on? Because it's about to get funky up in here.
Not only is Pac-Man Collection for the Atari 7800 a really fantastic game, it's also kind of like a scrapbook. It kind of chronicles a community of people trying to figure out how to program for the Atari 7800 when there wasn't a lot of documentation that existed online or anywhere else. People, led by Bob DeCrescenzo, started hacking Miss Pac-Man, and this is kind of like a collection of those experiments. Once Bob DeCrescenzo started figuring out how to program for this thing, he started writing these Pac-Man games from scratch, and that's kind of what you have here. Instead of buying a bunch of little homebrews, he decided to put everything into one package, and what's cool is that you can kind of control the options and make your own game in a way. Minus odd games like Super Pac-Man and Pac-and-Pal, this pretty much has everything you'd want to experience in a Pac-Man game. It features Pac-Man with the one singular maze. He featured Punck-Man, which was known in the arcades as New Puck X, and it features a slightly harder maze. But then it gets interesting. He included Hagley Man, Ultra Pac-Man, which those together had 6. Then he put in Miss Pac-Man, which featured a lot more lipstick than the other versions, plus it had 4 extra mazes. Miss Pac-Attack, which had more difficult mazes. And you can also play random mazes on this game that features 21 random mazes. You don't know what maze is next. And also, Miss Random mazes is in the game too, and that's just the same thing with more lipstick. But wait, there's more. You can actually add the Plus version, which if you don't know what Pac-Man Plus is, you can add a Plus version to this collection, any game you select, and that basically makes the game like an acid trip. Sometimes the maze turns invisible. When you eat a power pellet, one of the ghosts doesn't change into a blue ghost, so it makes the game much harder. Also, you can hold the button down to make yourself go faster, and you can let go of the button to make it slower. That's an option for you too. Overall, there's 100 variations of this game included in one cart. This at one point was the Atari Age #1 homebrew on the entire site, and that's remarkable for the simple fact that the 2600 is much more popular than the 7800, and for a 7800 game to be the most purchased cart on their website, it's amazing. If you haven't checked it out, unfortunately they don't sell this anymore because Atari purchased Atari Age, and legally they can't sell a Namco game. So you're going to have to look over the evil eBay or other markets to try to find Pac-Man collection for the Atari 7800. So while we're making this video, it's December 2024, and what's interesting about that is Atari has just released Caverns of Mars, a homebrew for the 2600 Plus, which can be played on their new 7800 Plus, which they have just released and they're shipping out as we speak. Caverns of Mars is an interesting game because it's the first homebrew, probably of all time, that was made by a bunch of dorks, and Atari gobbled it up and made a deal with them and sold it as their own game, and it's become part of the Atari lore. That happened on the Atari 8-bit computers, and what's interesting now is that we have Atari releasing homebrew games as their own as we speak, and they're being shipped as we are making this video in time for Christmas. Pretty cool. But getting back to this game, Caverns of Mars Recharged, this is part of the outstanding Recharged series, and this is available on the Atari VCS, but also Switch and Steam and Xbox and PlayStation. It's fast, it's sleek, I love the silhouette kind of graphics, and it's simple as hell. You're basically descending non-stop into Mars, and I didn't know Mars was this big, but you basically are just falling the whole time, and the only way you can slow yourself down is to fire your weapon, and when you fire your weapon, it takes your energy away. So you have this dance between trying not to crash into the walls and also preserving your fuel, because if you run out of fuel, you'll crash. But if you crash into the walls, you also crash. There are enemies abound. I think it's 7 or 8 levels into this thing, and you can defeat Caverns of Mars Recharged. It's pretty easy the first level or two, and then it kind of gets a little bit cagey, and at the end, it's a full-on knife fight with the Martian defenses, and you start racking up a lot of points at the end of this game. Caverns of Mars also tests your brain because it forces you to select power-ups at the end of each level. The power-ups are great, but they also have a detriment involved as well. You have to combine these in certain ways where you don't hurt yourself too bad as you also power yourself up. It's really fun kind of trying to figure out the smartest way to get through this game. And since the power-ups are random, there's never going to be the same game played twice. Again, like with all the Recharge games, some of the funnest parts about it is trying to get on the high score list and trying to be the top scorer. Interestingly enough, you can now play this game on Netflix. Netflix Games has released a couple of Atari games, and this one is one of those, and you should check it out because it's damn good. This is the list for sequels, I'm telling you what. So Defender 2 was a sequel to the massively popular Defender arcade game from Williams Electronics, and also the smash hit Atari 2600 game. Now this thing was originally released as Stargate, until Atari was like, hold on a second, nobody knows what the hell a Stargate is because MacGyver is still doing his MacGyver thing. He's not been transported to the land of Stargates. But in this game, it's very similar to the first Defender. Space aliens are coming down to Earth. It's just like the book of Genesis. They're trying to get our hot, really robust, big-legged women and suck them up in a tractor beam and take them to their prison discos on another planet. It's up to you to save the trim, baby. You know what I'm talking about. And we got a really cool ship this time. A really, really cool ship. In fact, it's got all sorts of devices. Now, you're sitting there going, hey, man, how many devices can an Atari 2600 game have with one button? Let me tell you, this game takes 2 controllers. And that could be problematic, especially if you're one of these people who are just trying to tap the button with his foot. But the first controller flies the ship and shoots the regular laser, which, by the way, sounds great. The audio in this game sounds great, and the graphics are great too. It looks like an arcade game, pretty much. But the second controller, plugged into the second control port, has a button function where if you push that button, it blows up everything on the screen with a smart bomb. Pretty smart. And if you push up, it activates something called Inviso. Now, Inviso sounds like a product from the 60s that housewives would apply to sofas to get rid of those damned tough-to-remove stains from the sofa or the tablecloth. But Inviso is actually something that turns your ship invisible and kind of makes you like a ram Funkman. Yeah, it's kind of like the funky little RAM function from Starlink, the Star Fox game for the Nintendo Switch. But I digress. You can actually ram crap with your ship. Pretty cool, and when you pull back on the joystick, it activates hyperspace. That clunky, dangerous, clumsy defense option that plagues Atari video games. Ah, this shit sucks! Stargate and Defender 2 are the same game. Defender 2 is just in that really cool burgundy box, which I really like those. And I forgot to say, this game even has like bonus levels that are different than the regular levels. So there's always something to look forward to and something to dread. This is by far one of the best shooters for the Atari 2600, but you may need a little aftermarket controller help to actually make this approachable enough to try to defeat the 100 levels of Defender 2. Atari recently has released Neo Sprint, and it's okay, but nothing's going to take the place of Super Sprint in the arcade. You and up to 2 other buddies could spin these wheels around in circles and laugh hysterically as you race around this top-down racer that's very similar to Badlands. In fact, Badlands is based off Super Sprint. This is more of a pure racing experience. Winner stays up style play, just like the old pool hall, your Uncle Lou down there, losing the family inheritance. But the winner stays up, the tracks get crazier as it goes, the gameplay is awesome, and you can power up your car as you go. The Sprint series is a series that I think Atari really needs to work on resurrecting. It looks like they have done it, but I would challenge them, instead of this new Neo Sprint diversion they went down, go back and look at what made Super Sprint a whole lot of fun, and get back into the original gameplay, because Super Sprint at the arcade is tough to beat. One of the best Atari sequels of all time is Millipede. Atari hit a home run with Centipede, this insane shoot 'em up where instead of being a spaceship, you're kind of like a tiny elf snakehead thing shooting a bunch of insects and bugs in the damn forest. Well, they took it a step further with Millipede, and Millipede includes more bad guys, more frantic action, more things to do, and also DDT, because hey, the world needs more paraquat poisoning the soil and the groundwater.
You just met me, you human paraquat.
But I digress. Shooting the DDT in this game explodes a pretty good portion of the screen, and you can take out the Millipede with a cleverly placed arrow, if this thing is still shooting arrows. I know we did in the first game. Huh. It looks like a magic wand. Who knows? Again, this is a trackball game, one of the best trackball games of all time. It is a quarter muncher, and from what I have heard, this is David Cross's, the comedian from Mr. Show with Bob and David. This is his favorite game of all time.
Now, idiots! It's simple! Look at this! This is what's airing right now! The Pet Care Show! Listen, I'm talking about pets!
Speaking of sequels, here's another one. Asteroids Deluxe. Yes, Asteroids is without a doubt one of the most important Atari games and arcade games of all time, but Asteroids Deluxe kind of improved upon it in a lot of different ways. It's pretty much the same game, except it improved your defense. That was my favorite part about Asteroids Deluxe. Instead of having hyperspace, which seems clunky, and if you ever saw a Star Wars movie, they're always crashing into stuff and always screaming bloody murder when they come out of hyperspace. Ah, this shit sucks! This game lets you have a shield, and the shield is kind of fun because, hey, there's a comical element to see your ship bouncing around a field of asteroids like you're in some sort of Looney Tunes cartoon. Couple the fact with it's a little bit tougher. You have one less guy instead of 3 ships. You have 2 because they think you're going to score more points, I guess. I don't know. It's kind of a jerky thing to do, Atari. Also, at the end of every level, there is a conglomerate of Borg-like ships that are just kind of hanging together. And once you start pecking those apart, they come at you in droves. And you got to scoot around shooting them bad guys. But this is a game that, you know, a lot of times when somebody comes out with a sequel, it's just a cheap cash in and it's not very fun. But this one improves the gameplay in a lot of different ways and makes this game interesting in its own regard, and that's why I really dig Asteroids Deluxe. Another 7800 game makes the list this week, and this one's called Donkey Kong XM. This also could be called Donkey Kong PK. You could also call this Donkey Kong GG, but you would be wrong. You could call it that, but it's not. Donkey Kong, the original release for the Atari 7800, is pretty disappointing. And let's not even get into what's going on with Donkey Kong's genital region. That is unfortunate for whatever happened to him and that farming threshing device he got too close to. The 7800 version of the game is okay, but I've never been a fan of it. In fact, it doesn't include all 4 boards. Neither did the Nintendo version. I don't see how that was ever okay. It left the conveyor belt system out, and also the music is atrocious. Donkey Kong XM or Donkey Kong PK is not a hack of this game. It's a total build-up homebrew that is amazing, and it was designed for the Atari XM, and XM stands for Expansion Module. Now, the Expansion Module was the brainchild of Curt Vendel, and if you don't know who he is, shame on you. He had a lot to do with Atari back in the day, especially during its waning years. And it was his dream to kind of have this peripheral you put on top of the 7800 that would have a pokey chip on board, which means you could just have better music all the way around. It would also increase RAM, so there could be bigger games made for the 7800, and also would have a high score functionality where you could store your high scores. Now the problem is a guy named Groovy B, also known as Mark Ball, got involved, and he was a big scammer. In fact, he's been flushed out of the homebrew community for ripping people off. With things like this, he got involved in and tanked, and he also screwed up a bunch of Intellivision homebrews, took a bunch of money, and disappeared. That was bad enough, but couple that with the fact that Curt Vendel passed away, and the expansion module just went bye-bye. So that was it for the expansion module. But you had this game floating out there called Donkey Kong XM. People wanted to see it completed. So the guy who worked on this changed this into Donkey Kong PK. And all that means is that there's a little bit extra RAM in this cart, and also it has a pokey chip, so it has superior sound. Not only does the gameplay play almost like the arcade, the graphics are almost arcade perfect, the sound is tremendous, and it also has the missing conveyor belt scene, but it also lets you choose if you want to play through the screens Japanese style or American style. The arcades apparently had different board orders depending on where you lived. I prefer the Japanese style, and I'm not just trying to say that to sound edgy, cool, even though I really do like sushi, and that might have influenced my decision a little bit. By the way, Kurt, if you're looking down from heaven, if there is such a place, I hope you're happy the Atari 7800 Plus is releasing. I think that's something you envisioned years and years ago, and I hope it makes you proud. Thanks for everything you did for the community, buddy. A lot of people would be surprised to know that Robotron and Super Smash Bros. TV are not the first two twin-stick games that were ever invented. Well, what is a twin-stick game? Well, it's another unique control system that Atari invented. It basically gives you two joysticks. They're twins. Same mother, same father. One joystick controls the main character in the game, and the second joystick controls where this person shoots. So this generates the walk one way, shoot another way type of situations you see in Robotron, and also with Black Widow, which was an Atari arcade game which was dynamite back in the day. But here we go with another recharge game, and these recharge games, I've said this many times on this list, and I will keep saying it, most of them are fantastic. This takes what made the original game great, and it improves upon it in a lot of different ways, with very few detriments. One of the coolest attributes about this are the power-ups. The power-ups help you, because man, I'm telling you, in this game, you are getting swarmed, pardon the pun, with all sorts of insects. You have a special weapon, which is a gigantic, massive Spider-Man looking web that destroys everything on the screen at one time. And it's great. The graphics are great. The music is great. It's got this disco, retro, futuristic vibe that I really jive with. It doesn't try to make vector graphics like the original game. It just kind of improves upon it. Also, it has those great leaderboards that I always sing praises of. And there's tons of little achievements you can get, and also little side missions you can horse around with, which increases the value of this game exponentially. Also, speaking of value, these games are very cheap. They're normally about $10, and there's plenty of sales through the year where you can get these things for like $5. That makes this just a no-brainer. Man, sometimes Atari does some pretty baffling things, but sometimes their ideas are very interesting. They released Mr. Run and Jump, which is a platformer for multiple systems, and people do that all the time with different games. But they also released, at the same time, to promote the Atari 2600 Plus, they released an 8-bit version, which is very rudimentary for the Atari 2600 Plus. On a side note, looking at YouTube, I can't decide which one is more popular. I think more people have made videos and played the 2600 Plus version of Mr. Run and Jump over this technological Dynamo version of Mr. Run and Jump. Just an interesting side note. Then they've also, with this announcement trailer, they kind of conflated that they're kind of connected and blah, blah, blah. But at the end of the day, this is a massive, dazzling adventure, as they call it, platformer where you take a guy who, he's the eponymous hero. He's Mr. Run and Jump. I also like the fact, I want to time out here real quick. I like the fact that Atari kind of addresses the fact that they don't really invest a lot of time or creativity or money or marketing or text groups into their heroes of their video games. So this guy's just kind of this innocuous, hey, I'm Mr. Run and Jump. Hey, you got a name? Nah, that's it. Oh, well, you have a backstory? You're in a toadstool princess land, or you trying to save somebody? Hey, I just run and jump. Hey, leave me alone here. I don't even have a face. I kind of like that in a way. He's kind of like the big brother of the square in Adventure. But anyway, I digress. I'm going to be honest with you. I'm terrible at platform games. This is a platform game all the way. There's no puzzle solving. There's no shooting. There's nothing like that. It's just platform, platform, platform. If you like jumping around crazy go nuts, this is the game for you. This also was up for Platformer of the Year in 2023, the VCS and modern versions of this game. It didn't win because Mario is the king of that jive. But I would like to say, with all due respect to Mr. Run and Jump, and he deserves a lot of respect, especially with this clunky, weird marketing double release of 8-bit and modern style platformers, the same game. I would like to say, Mr. Mario, you may have a brand new contender for Platformer King, and his name is Bentley. Oh, how the turntables turn. Huh? Well, we are going to talk about the 31st best Atari game of all time. And this is a homebrew by the man, the myth, the legend, Bob DeCrescenzo, the guy we talked about earlier, who did the Pac-Man 7800 collection. So this is a perfect bookend for my buddy Bobby D. Now, this game came out about 11 years ago, and people loved it. It was a platformer extraordinaire, run and shoot type game. And no, this doesn't have anything to do with trackballs. This is not like a Pac-Man style isometric game like the arcade version of Crystal Castles. This basically is a lot like Wonder Boy. Well, I have talked about this game a lot in the recent weeks because as this video is being released, Atari 7800 Pluses are being delivered to good boys and girls across this great land. And the pack-in game, when you buy a bundle, is Bentley Bear's Crystal Quest. Now, that's all well and good. This game deserves tons of praise. There's tons of worlds. There's great parallax scrolling. There's the enemies from the original game. The guy can jump like a mother. He puts Mr. Run and Jump to shame. Well, maybe not. He's a little heavy. He's a plus-sized fella. Maybe he can't jump like Mr. Run and Jump or Mario. But he packs heat, and I'm not talking about between his legs, ladies. I'm talking about this guy throws crystals like a mofo, and he can even upgrade his arsenal as he plays. He's trying to kill Berthilda. For some reason, he's obsessed with gaining 5 giant red ruby-like crystals throughout the land and bringing them back to his sleepy cave. And, hey, good luck to him. And there's tons of warp pipes and one-ups and all this stuff. Now, what makes this apropos is I just released a video called The Control Issues with Bentley Bear's Crystal Quest, and I want you guys to check that out, especially if you've never played the game before. And the problem with Bentley Bear is it went from a game 11 years ago, 10 years ago, whatever it was, where people played Crystal Quest on an Atari 7800 with a Pro Line controller, and the game was designed for that. Now we're getting a re-release, great, from Atari 7800 Plus, great. And they even get better, the European style controllers, great. But the problem is, those don't jive well with this game. So please look at that video. But with all that out there in the ether, I don't want it to detract from the fact that this is an amazing game that features tons of worlds. And there's even like 8 secret worlds that you got to find. And those are double tough. And there's a lot of different things that you run across that will make you scratch your head. But man, this is a whirlwind, dynamite. Great music too, by the way. This game has pokey music if you get the original cart. What's really cool is it has a lot of the classical themes that the original arcade version had with the you know, the songs, the orchestras. Hey man, I live in Baltimore. I don't know any of the guys. Tchotchke's a guy, maybe Chopin, maybe Mozart, maybe Beethoven. Tchotchke, is that a guy? No. Scott Baio? No? Okay. With all that being said, this game is fantastic, and looking at the list now, I'm surprised it's not even higher. I wonder what me and John were smoking that night. This one probably should be a little higher, but as it stands, forget about it. Number 31. Alright guys, well that's it for this week. I hope you enjoyed the video. Tell us, did we miss something? Did we get something wrong? Do you hate this list? Are you getting freaked out that your favorite game's not on the list yet? Please, put in the comments what you think, and if we missed something, let us know. We want to know. Also, make sure you like and subscribe and hit the notify bell so you know when the next video counting down the top 100 is. You don't want to miss one. All the cool kids are going to be talking about it for years to come. I want to thank Jon Stoll over at the Atari Network, and I want to put his channel in the description. And also, don't forget, check out my website, Atari7800forever.com, and also go to bigandfunkyproductions.com. We make movies. Right now it's Halloween. We're making horror movies. We've made horror movies. Check those out. The Hike, WJHCAM, and Camp Smokey. Plus we do all sorts of other types of TV. We got a brand new show called Weird Roads, a new episode of Wrestling with Ghosts. Just go check it out. You'll be entertained for years to come. Alright, make sure you stay tuned to this channel so you can see what we crown the top 100 Atari games of all time.